Good evening, and happy today's Wednesday for me. Happy whatever day it is for you. I guess it's Thursday now. It's 2 a.m. We are back with Collected Fables. We will be starting with The Birds and the Foxes. Once upon a time, there was a bird sanctuary in which hundreds of Baltimore Orioles lived together happily. The refuge consisted of a forest entirely surrounded by a high wire fence. When it was put up, a pack of foxes who lived nearby protested that it was an arbitrary and unnatural boundary. However, they did nothing about it at the time because they were interested in civilizing the geese and ducks on the neighboring farms. When all the geese and ducks had been civilized, there was nothing else left to eat. The foxes once more turned their attention to the bird sanctuary. Their leader announced that they had once been foxes in the sanctuary, but they had not been driven out. He proclaimed that Baltimore Orioles belonged in Baltimore, he said. Furthermore, that the Orioles in the sanctuary were a continuous menace to the peace of the world. The other animals cautioned the foxes not to disturb the birds in their sanctuary. So the foxes attacked the sanctuary one night and tore down the fence that surrounded it. The Orioles rushed out and were instantly killed and eaten by the foxes. The next day, the leader of the foxes, a fox from whom God was receiving daily guidance, got upon the rostrum and addressed the other foxes. His message was simple and sublime. "You see before you," he said, "another Lincoln. We have liberated all those birds." Moral: the government of the Orioles, by the foxes and for the foxes, must perish from the earth. That was a little confusing. The Courtship of Arthur and Al. Once upon a time, there was a young beaver named Al and an older beaver named Arthur. They were both in love with a pretty little female. She looked with disfavor upon the youngest beaver's suit, because he was a harum scarum and a ne'er-do-well. He had never done a single gnaw of work in his life, and he preferred to eat and sleep, and to swim lazily in the streams, and to play "Now I'll Chase You" with the girls. The older beaver had never done anything but work from the time he had got his first teeth. He had never played anything with anybody. When the young beaver asked the female to marry him, she said she wouldn't think of it unless he amounted to something. She reminded him that Arthur had built 32 dams and was working on 3 others, whereas he, Al, had never even made a breadboard or a pin tray in his life. Al was very sorry, but he said that he would never go to work just because a woman wanted him to. Thereupon, she offered to be a sister to him, but he pointed out that he already had 17 sisters, so he went back to eating and sleeping and swimming in the streams and playing spider in the parlor with the girls. The female never get away from work for more than 1 hour at a time. The female married Arthur one day at the lunch hour. He could never get away from work for more than 1 hour at a time. They had seven children, and Arthur worked so hard supporting them that he wore his teeth down to the gum line. His health broke in two before long, and he died without ever having had a vacation in his life. The young beaver continued to eat and sleep and swim in the streams and play unbutton your shoe with the girls. He never got anywhere, but he had a long life and a wonderful time. Moral: it is better to have loafed and lost than never to have loafed at all. The hen who wouldn't fly. In one of the Midwestern states, there lived a speckled hen who was opposed to aviation. In her youth, watching a flight of wild geese going north, she had seen two fall, shot by hunters, go into a nosedive and crash into the woods. So, she went about the countryside saying that flying was very dangerous and that any fowl with any sense would stick to the solid earth. Every time she had to cross a concrete highway near the farm, she ran on foot, screaming and squawking. Sometimes she made it easily, and other times she was almost tagged by passing cars. 5 of her sisters and 3 of her daughters' husbands were killed trying to cross the road in 1 month, July. Before long, an enterprising wood duck set up an airways service across the road and back. He charged 5 grains of corn to take a hen or a rooster across, 2 grains for a chicken, but the speckled hen, who was a power in the community, went around clucking and cutting and caterwauking and telling everybody that air travel was not safe and never would be. She persuaded the chickens not to ride on the duck's back, and he failed in business and returned to the forest. Before the year was out, the speckled hen, 4 more of her sisters, 3 of her sons-in-laws, 4 aunts, and a grandfather had been killed trying to cross the road on foot. Moral: use the wings God gave you, or nothing can save you. The glass in the field. A short time ago, some builders working on a studio in Connecticut left a huge square of plate glass standing upright in a field one day. A goldfinch flying swiftly across the field struck the glass and was knocked cold. When he came to, he hastened to his club, where an attendant bandaged his head and gave him a stiff drink. "What the hell happened?" asked the seagull. "I was flying across a meadow when all of a sudden the air crystallized on me," said the goldfinch. The seagull and a hawk and an eagle all laughed heartily. A swallow listened gravely. "For 15 years, fledgling the bird, I have flown this country," said the eagle, "and I assure you there is no such thing as air crystallizing. Water, yes. Air, no. You were probably struck by a hailstone," said the hawk. The hawk said to the goldfinch. "Or you may have had a stroke," said the seagull. "What do you think, swallow?" "Why, I think maybe the air crystallized on him," said the swallow. The large birds laughed so loud that the goldfinch became annoyed and bet them each a dozen worms that they couldn't follow the course he had flown across the field without incurring the hardening atmosphere. They all took his bet. The swallow went along to watch. The seagull, the eagle, the hawk decided to fly together over the route the goldfinch indicated. "You come too," they said to the swallow. I, well, no," said the swallow. "I don't think I will." So the 3 large birds took off together, and they hit the glass together, and they were all knocked cold. Moral: he who hesitates is sometimes saved. This will be the last one for the night. It's called The Tortoise and the Hare. There was once a wise young tortoise who read in an ancient book about a tortoise who had beaten a hare in a race. He read all the other books he could find, but in none of them was there any record of a hare who had beaten a tortoise. The wise young tortoise came to the natural conclusion that he could outrun a hare, so he set forth to search of one. In his wanderings, he met many animals who were willing to race him: weasels, stoats, dachshunds, badgers, boars, short-tailed field mice, and ground squirrels. But when the tortoise asked if they could outrun a hare, they all said no, they couldn't. With the exception of a dachshund named Freddie, and nobody paid any attention to him. "Well, I can," said the tortoise. "So there's no use wasting my time on you," and he continued his search. After many days, the tortoise finally encountered a hare and challenged him to a race. "What are you going to use for legs?" asked the hare. "Never mind that," said the tortoise. "Read this." He showed the hare the story in the ancient book, complete with morals about the swift not always being so terribly fast. "Tosh," said the hare, "you can go 50 feet in an hour and a half, whereas I can go 50 feet in 1 1/5 seconds." "Posh," said the tortoise, "you probably won't even finish second." "We'll see about that," said the hare. So they marked off a course 50 feet long. All the other animals gathered around. A bullfrog set them on their marks. A gun dog fired a pistol, and they were off. When the hare crossed the finish line, the tortoise had gone approximately 8 3/4 inches. Moral: a new broom may sweep clean, but never trust an old saw. That will do it for tonight. Sleep well.